Device number 3, Satan's strategies to keep saints in a state of sadness, doubting, questioning, and discomfort. Have you ever been angry with God? I would actually venture to say pretty much every believer has been angry with God in terms of his judgment, his decisions, his decision to deprive us of something that we think we really ought to have. Device number 3, Satan discourages believers by causing them to believe that when bad stuff happens to them, it's because God doesn't love them. So what's the remedy? Sometimes what we want or seek isn't in our spiritual and eternal best interest. Examples are found in the scripture in the lives of Abraham, Jacob, David, Job, Moses, Jeremiah, Jonah, and Paul. They received things from God they didn't want. Sometimes the best medicine tastes bad. Surgery also can be painful during recovery, but healing comes later. So Satan discourages us by causing us to think that God doesn't love us because of the bad things that have happened. Remedy 2. Sometimes God's hand works against what a believer desires, but God still loves the believer. God loved Ephraim, but his hand was against him. In Jeremiah 31:18-21, I have heard Ephraim grieving. You have disciplined me, and I was disciplined. Like an untrained calf, bring me back that I may be restored. For you are the Lord my God. For after I had turned away, I relented, and after I was instructed, I struck my thigh. I was ashamed, and I was confounded, because I bore the disgrace of my youth. Is Ephraim my dear son? Is he my dear child? For as often as I speak against him, I do remember him still. Therefore my heart yearns for him. I will surely have mercy on him, declares the Lord. That's from Jeremiah 31, verses 18-21, speaking of the tribe of Ephraim. On the other hand, God's hand was with Saul, Haman, Asher, and Jehu temporarily, but then his heart was later against them. King Saul. Ecclesiastes 9:1-2. But all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and to him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as one who shuns an oath. The examples that I gave of King Saul, Haman, Asher, and Jehu are in the handout that you can find listed. God's heart was very much with Job, but he allowed much bad stuff to come against Job. And I give the chapters in Job that explain this. Remedy 3. Whenever God opposes your desires, it is for a noble and good purpose. Joseph was sold into slavery to save his extended family. Genesis 37:7 says it like this: Behold, we are bending sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. David was destined to be a king, but he endured much trouble before he was made king, and many people died in that process. Understand, these things happen, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love the person. God loved David. No question about that in the scripture. God loved Joseph. No question about that in the scripture. But still, very bad things happened to them, not because God didn't love them. So when bad things happen to you, understand it's not simple. The answer is not simple. That sometimes God allows these things and he loves you. Does God love you? Well, don't measure it against whether good or bad things happen to you. Remedy 4, everything God does on our behalf brings us closer and closer to our heavenly inheritance. Each of David's trials brought him closer to the throne. Daniel's tribulations always resulted in improving his position in enemy territory. So whenever you experience a setback, recognize that it will be used by God to lift you out of earthly things and raise you up to heavenly things. Noah's trials produced his deliverance. The stones flung at Stephen knocked him closer to Christ, who is the chief cornerstone.